What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Claudia Bellafato holding it down for us in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We got a great show for everybody. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, and you can catch the best of GoJo and Golic every day wherever you hear VSiN on the radio from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. Fun one today, getting one of our old buddies in here because some is great and more is better when it comes to Notre Dame alums in the media. Jordan Cornette, NBC Sports hoops analyst, going to stop by and talk with us about a little bit of what's going on in college basketball season. I saw a very passionate defensive court storming from Jordan Cornette, as well as a number of other things. One of our favorite guys to visit with and check in with there. And that is because we are in the heart of hoop season right now. We will get to plenty of NFL Combine topics as we keep going through the drills today. We got the questions round today, all those strange Combine questions that you've heard about people getting answered and asked over the years. Dad, I don't know, was that as much of a thing when you went through the Combine back in the olden days out in Arizona?
All right, easy on the olden days, number one. Number two, no, it was not. You had more kind of a normal interview. There wasn't those kind of things. We had the Wonderlic test. That was kind of our thing to do. And then you had your meetings, and yeah, they were just normal type questions. I never really started hearing about this stuff until I started, was in the media and started covering it, where the questions got a little more different as the years went on. And it still baffles me, some of the ridiculous questions that are asked. And I know they give their reasons on why they ask them. If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? I get there's a psychological or philosophical reason you're doing it, but it seems kind of weird for a game of football, quite honestly.
Is there really a reason, though? Like, I don't know if I believe that. And I feel like if I was a player, I'd get more nervous for those questions, because you know how the media runs with something that you say, you think it's sweet and innocent, and they're like, J.J. McCarthy said this. So I'd be more worried about those questions if I were a player.
In the ways of NFL trying to do all their homework because they're going to invest millions of dollars in these players, they a lot of times leave no stone unturned. So they will talk to, hey, we want to know about the mind of this guy. So they'll talk to psychologists who have nothing to do with sports, who would maybe use this in their line of work on why they would ask a question or what the meaning is. And maybe I'm just thinking, giving them more credit than it's due. Maybe they're just told, hey, when you interview a guy, think of 3 really stupid questions to ask him along the way. It could be that simple, and I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, so I don't know why I'm doing that.
It's fair.
Well, in that vein, I have come up with what I believe can be a Combine-level question that I want to probe this group within a little bit in the show and see what kind of answers we get. We have workshopped this. This has come from extensive work with psychologists, a.k.a. I looked it up on Reddit and found it. Those are our nation's foremost psychologists. In the meantime, Dad, I'm going to ask a way simpler question at this point in time as we are in the home stretch of the NBA season. And as I'm watching the action last night, the question popped into my mind, if not now, then when? Watching this Boston Celtics team, Dad, if not now, then when for this group? As you have seen this team that is now 7.5 games up on the second place Cleveland Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference. They get a win over the Joel Embiidless Philadelphia 76ers, who probably kept that closer longer than they should have for the body of that game without their star player. This has still been an incredible run, 25 straight home wins against Eastern Conference opponents. They've been a juggernaut this year, Dad, so if Boston can't get this done, how big of a disaster is this for the Celtics?
Oh, it's huge. We talked about this on the baseball side last year with Atlanta, of you got to close the deal. You look good in the regular season, you got to close the deal. Multiply this by about 100 for Boston and what they're doing right now and how they need to close it. You mentioned it, 7.5 to the second place Cavaliers. Out in the West, you got to go down 7 teams. Minnesota's first, Sacramento's 7th. They're 7.5 back, so it's a lot closer there. And it's one of those years right now where it's kind of all hitting with what Porzingis is doing. We'll talk about Derek White and what he's doing, but it's not just the stars, though Porzingis is there, but the guys that Boston had with Brown and Tatum. but what you've added and how you add to the chemistry of a team, and it's all clicking right now. But yeah, if it doesn't click all the way, it's going to be a waste. There are people that are done with Boston for the regular season, right? It doesn't matter. We know you're going to get there, and in this case, you're going to get there and be the overwhelming number one seed. So that doesn't mean anything. You got to close this deal, and if they can't do it, then that's going to be just another, especially for a guy like Jayson Tatum in basketball, where you really put it on the players. We always talk, or at least I do, why is the Super Bowl rings on a quarterback? Well, I get it in NBA championships on players because they're on the court, as we've talked about. They're on the court, offense, defense. They can be on the court the entire game, so having an influence on the entire game. So I think for Tatum, this is part of what he needs to keep growing in stature and in legacy, is to close these deals out.
Yeah, it was interesting you bring him up in particular. Draymond Green the other day was talking about Jayson Tatum and kind of what's at stake for him in his place in the NBA towards the end of the season as it regards not only the championship, but the prospect of an MVP.
The goalpost has shifted dramatically because in this guy's case, he's fifth and they got a 7.5 game lead in the conference. That goalpost is moving on JT. I don't know what JT got to do. I do know what JT got to do. I told y'all last time what JT got to do. JT will not be taken serious for the MVP until he win a championship. And it just hasn't been that way for everybody else, I must say.
It is interesting, and Draymond brings up a compelling point about where Jayson Tatum is in the conversation about NBA stars in general and the conversation about the MVP. But, Dad, the comparison that I thought of when you were talking about the way this Boston Celtics team has been together for a while, especially their core, sans Kristaps Porzingis, who obviously came over this offseason. Right. It's a lot like what the Denver Nuggets had gone through leading up to this point. The difference was Nikola Jokic was regarded as not only one of the best current players in the NBA, but based on individual accomplishment, broaching on one of the best players of all time. It's why that championship last year went so far, because based on what he was leading up to in terms of multiple-time MVPs, he was becoming a guy that was in rarefied air amongst NBA bigs that didn't match up with the championship hardware. For Jayson Tatum, I think, Dad, a lot of it is because for so long, while he's been a name for a long time and been a guy that's received lofty comparisons, I remember people talking about his skill set saying LeBron James is a guy that's one of his few peers in terms of height, weight, speed, length, ability, the things that stack up just physically for Jayson Tatum. But it feels like we've always considered him in tandem with Jaylen Brown. It's always been about that young core of the Celtics roster, and we've never really, I think, taken the time to pull them apart and consider their individual nature. Because even last night against the Sixers, you look at the final score of that game, Jaylen Brown goes off for 31. Jayson Tatum's got 29. There are stretches where other guys are taking over here, and it doesn't fall squarely on the shoulders of a guy like Jayson Tatum the way it might for someone like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's got to create a little bit more for what goes on in Oklahoma City. So, Dad, do you think Draymond's right? Do you think it's going to have to kind of go in reverse order for Jayson here?
Yeah, I think you see that in lesser things and in other sports, like a football player kind of coming out of nowhere but doesn't make a Pro Bowl until he plays really well, and then the next year he gets the love for it. So you wonder if for Jayson Tatum it has to be what Draymond said in a larger sense. They need to win the title, and then next year, he can be a guy that's looked at. But to your point, Joker has done things on his own, carried that team on his own, and he's a big man. That always adds to it, let's be honest. When you're a big man doing special things, that's always a interesting thing to people. And Jayson Tatum, you're right, it's been like a duo with him. So is he better than we're giving him credit for? We've considered him one of the top players in the league for a while. And by the way, he's only 25 years old. And I know they can start, 1 year out of college, so more like 19 years old, but still, and the guy is young in what he's done. But I think I understand what Draymond is saying, about Tatum and winning it. And this is the year, right? So I think if this is the year and they win the title and he plays next year, or obviously not plays next year, but plays extremely well next year, I think you start looking at that more. Is that fair? No, I don't think it's fair. You think he should be higher on the list of where was he? Fifth? I think Claudia had him on the as far as odds, fifth to win it. It's just the other guys now have become established, well, except for, Alexander, what he's doing in Oklahoma City. He kind of came onto the scene as well. So, and now leading Oklahoma City to possibly the top of the West.
I think this is the only issue across all sports when we talk about depth being an issue, and it's really only comes down to an individual issue because we talk about the depth of the Celtics. That's the reason Tatum's not getting the MVP looks. I look at a guy like Luka. Everybody's talking about SGA, but look at what Luka has done, continuing. Didn't skip a beat from last season. If you want to talk stat lines, 34.5 a game, basically 9 rebounds and 10 assists. If you look at the stat leaderboard for Dallas, he is everything, yet you're seeing him on the board. He's at plus 550 behind SGA, decent amount. So I get the love for Tatum 100%. He deserves to be in the conversation, but Luka has no help, guys. Where is the love for Luka?
No, you're right. It should be there. We talked about that last week, leading the league in points per game for the first time in his career. The guy's averaging 34.5 points per game. That's insane. Yeah. And he's doing it, by the way, it's not like we talked about Jayson Tatum having help. He's doing it in a backcourt that's got Kyrie Irving. And Kyrie Irving, who's not spouting conspiracy theories and just getting to the rack and doing some of the crazy Kyrie Irving finishing moves that we've seen throughout his career. Like, he's got some of that, but you're right, Claudia, to your point, it still seems like such a singular experience with Luka Doncic and what he's been able to do for that team that suffered a heartbreaker at the buzzer last night at the hands of Max Strus and the Cleveland Cavaliers. But I think that also is the difference right there. You're right. Depth is the highlight. And Jayson Tatum deserves credit for the willingness to say, hey, I don't need to force it because we've got all these other parts, because we brought Kristaps Porzingis over, and now this guy who later in his career has developed a post-up presence, in addition to being the unicorn stretch five that he came into the league as, and that's affected and changed the way that we can play basketball with what you've got with Drew Holiday and Derek White in that backcourt as far as defensive guards on this team. You've got so much help out there for Jayson Tatum, and he's right to use it. And I also do think all of this kind of backdrop underscores another point, which is the MVP is certainly a conversation, but if you're Jayson Tatum and really the way that we've structured the NBA at large now in modern discourse about this, the finals MVP matters a lot more, right? Because it goes in concert with the ultimate goal that we dangle in front of these guys anyway. All we do the minute you stack up enough MVPs is ask if you haven't won a championship, why that's the case, and start to devalue it anyway. So if Jayson Tatum can get to the finals and if the Boston Celtics cross the goal line with this thing, Jayson Tatum is more than likely going to be the guy that's lifting the finals MVP when that's all said and done, and he's finally got the rest of the right team around them, built in the right ways, having a modern big like Kristaps to battle with, not only the other guys in the East, especially if Joel gets healthy, but what you've got lurking in the West. And Claudia, that's kind of the other portion of this conversation is we've talked about the disparity between Boston and the Eastern Conference, but you look out West and you've got certainly teams like the Denver Nuggets, the defending champs and Nikola Jokic, but also teams like the Golden State Warriors that are getting more and more whole as the season goes along and just got even more back last night.
Yeah, Chris Paul missed 21 games. He's back, had to have surgery on that left hand. And this sort of spoke to just how much depth the Warriors do have, which I don't think we talk about. That second unit specifically, though. Klay Thompson coming off of the bench, now double digits for him in 7 of the last 8. Scored 25 last night. Chris Paul coming into that one. 9 points, which we know he's not going to go crazy with points, but 6 assists, 4 rebounds, 4 steals, plus 17 net rating, though, which showed just how impactful it was to have him back in the mix. And Steve Kerr was happy with the second unit, and I don't blame him.
What a luxury to come off the bench with Chris Paul and Klay Thompson. I mean, that's crazy. So it's I think I said this before the game, but it feels like we've kind of found a nice combination of a starting group that we've been able to count on, over the last month, and a second unit that's been good all year. But adding Klay to that only makes it better.
And you have Steph Curry, too, which doesn't hurt. They've won 8 of their last 10 around even money, so odds makers think it's likely that they do make the playoffs, but they're not heavy favorites to get in. What do you guys think about them at this point, if they do get everybody back on board healthy?
Yeah, I think they remain kind of where we've been talking about them for a while, Dad, in my mind, which is prime spoiler territory. You got a couple of teams in the top seeds in Minnesota or Oklahoma City who are doing this for the first time with these cores and have young dudes with these cores. And now all of a sudden, Claudia mentioned it, you got 2 Hall of Famers manning the helm of your second unit if you're the Golden State Warriors. That counts for something in the postseason. I think there's been multiple times. Chris Paul is certainly not what he once was. And the looming specter of injury that had kept him off the court until this is such a fear at this point in his career, which, man, now as someone in their mid-30s, boy, do I understand why all these older athletes are hurt all the time when I'm foam rolling to go to Pilates class. But this is the prime thing. You've got people that are the adults on the floor when things go wrong. And I think that's kind of what everything Claudia just described and everything we saw last night from CP3 is when things are starting to get a little bit out of whack, you've got someone that's never overwhelmed by the situation. And that counts for a lot. And again, Golden State is not going to win a title this year. I feel pretty comfortable in saying that, even with Steph Curry looming, looking to make me look stupid. But they're absolutely capable, especially in a series early on where these guys are coming in and aren't worn down yet by the pace of this series set up in the postseason, to absolutely clip one of these top teams if they're not ready for it based on the style they play.
I mean, what Steve Kerr said is so true. Look at that bench. I mean, what do they outscore Washington 59-15 off the bench? Again, Thompson and Chris Paul off the bench. When you got, and that's what you're looking for when your star is off the court. How is the time filled? What can Paul do when Steph's off the court? When they're on the court together, Steph can be off ball that way as well. So, I mean, depth, it can be such an important thing in a series, which is obviously what basketball is. So I guess I would agree in the fact of the 4 teams looking to do the play-in right now. It's Sacramento, and that could change because Phoenix, Sacramento, with Pelicans, Dallas, all kind of right there. It could shift around. But right now, between Sacramento, Dallas, Golden State, and the Lakers, who, if you're in the top 6, are you fearing the most that can beat you? It's Golden State, without question. To me, it's Golden State. I know you got Luka, but as Claudia mentioned, you got Luka, and that's really it. With all that Luka's doing, they're sitting in the ace slot, right? A game and a half away from being in the 10. So he's doing everything just to keep their head above water. The Golden State could literally make a bit of a run here. I agree with you. I don't think they're going to win it, but I think they can make a run. And all of a sudden, it's kind of still setting up that it's they and the Lakers in the 9-10 slots will play that winner has a chance to be in, loser is out, because Utah seems to be a little far back. Dallas, like I said, is within range to catch. But I still think that's what everybody wants, the 9-10 game to be Golden State and Los Angeles. But if you're doing that, the winner of that game is the where they're going to be in this thing. You're looking up at the top of the conference, so you're like, you sure we want to win the conference? We're going to have to play Golden State in the first round. That could really end poorly for us right now.
Say we hear all these conversations about the 1 seed, man. It's a lot less cute when all of a sudden that's the challenger entering the arena on the other side, the multiple-time NBA champions who, they're not as good as they once were, but, as good once as they ever was, I think is the line, and could absolutely be the case with these guys. So it makes for an exciting stretch down the season because getting healthy at the right time. We talked about, on the other side, man, watching Boston and what happened with the 76ers last night. The 76ers team fought hard, but unless Joel Embiid can come back healthy, like we've seen for a lot of the guys returning for Golden State and some of these other squads, it's just not going to matter in the long run, because eventually you're going to hit one of these stretches where a team could put their foot down on the gas and just unload points on you because you've got no rim protector. You don't have the basic needs you have to get by. Coming up next, though, I'm looking up at the scores from last night. All things considered, given the modern NBA, not too bad. Cavs 121-119, Warriors 123-112, Hawks 124-97. Scoring, though, we know up across most of the NBA. And has it finally gone high enough to where the powers that be are going to take a look under the hood? We'll get into the NBA's scoring spree next here on GoJo and Golic.
GoJo and Golic. Apparently, there's too much offense in the NBA. I didn't think that would be an issue, considering nobody ever wants to bet unders because we want more points. However, the NBA doesn't think this is fun. They're saying that we want to change this. There's an offensive imbalance, so the competition committee is actually reviewing this to see what they can change to make it better. And yes, scoring is up, but again, I don't think it's a bad thing. Average is the highest since 1969. The league has set a record for offensive efficiency 6 times in the past 8 seasons, but that's no surprise when you have the stars like you do. We mentioned Luka, 34 a game. You have guys like Devin Booker dropping 62, Luka 73, Cat 62, and Embiid dropped 70. That's 4 players just last month. That is a little crazy when you think about it, but what are you supposed to do, guys? Just say, hey, can you play defense? Like, that's the other part of the NBA, just play defense. What is the committee going to do here?
Yeah, that was the cry from some guys. I think it was Aaron Gordon who they talked to with the Denver Nuggets, who's like, some of you just need to care more about playing good defense, and that'll get a lot of this solved. But, Dad, I'm generally with Claudia, where you and I have had this battle when it comes to football and plenty of sports. I am a former offensive player. I'm generally inclined to believe, like most fans in most leagues, that offense is the thing that's selling tickets for you. People want to come to see action in their sport. It's why Major League Baseball enjoyed such a boom last year on the backs of the pitch clock, because it sped up the action and it gave us a little bit more frequently. And so for the NBA right now, I do think that coming off the All-Star game, there's a little bit of sensitivity to this that is probably going to fade once we get into the postseason, because that's the other part of this is we're talking about, I think, the disparity between regular season basketball and postseason basketball, where we almost always see, all right, with the benefit of more strict game plans, actual time to set those game plans and rotations against what you're going to specifically see for a series and another team, we see a lot better defense and a lot better teams in the postseason. So is this enough, Dad, in the regular season to be a problem the NBA actually has to address?
Yeah, I don't know if they have to address this thing. I do think the sensitivity of the All-Star game, it's what happened in the NFL, right? I mean, all NFL rules have been made for the offense to be a DB in the NFL now. I mean, you should get hazard pay for that, for how difficult they've made it, and they don't care because they want the offensive firepower. Went too far, obviously, in the Pro Bowl, the way they do that. And again, we talk about the NBA All-Star game. We all just kind of shake our head. Like I said, I don't watch it anyway. I like watching the skills competition. So what can you do? And I guess the bigger question is to what you guys have just said. Should you do anything? Is it a problem? Is it something that's turning fans off? Where are ratings now in basketball? If they're down, why are they down? Is it because of that? Those are questions I don't know. But one thing I do know, if you'd like to change it a little bit, if you'd like to, a little less, of the high scoring games and the freewheeling out there, when they played basketball when I was growing up, Mike, it was a different game. You want to incorporate that a little bit? Swallow the whistle a little bit, right? Swallow the whistle a little bit. Driving the lane all of a sudden finds you on your back a few times more. I'm just saying, if you listen, it's a physical game already. I'm not going to sit here and say basketball is not a physical game. It is a physical game. When you watch that game up close, there is hitting and contact on every single play. But if you want to, stop this, if you think there is, when Silver took over, 105 points per 100 possessions, now it's 115 points per 100 possessions. So if you want to knock that down a little bit, let the guys get a little more, physical on the defensive side. Now, it's a fine line of turning it into ball that I saw, growing up in the late 80s and even earlier than that. But that could be a way to bring that back a little bit, bring back a little of the physicality that once was.
Well, Dad, I think a lot of what you're talking about there is what most people have whittled down to hand checking. People have made this an issue that once hand checking became a thing that the NBA was going to strictly adhere to, the game all of a sudden changed a little bit. But honestly, I think a lot more of this, even if you wanted to do what you do and turn it into all-out war again by swallowing the whistle a little bit, I think there's too much space to cover now. The league's emphasis on three-point shooting and the fact that you've not only got great guards, great wing players that are capable of doing it, but also great bigs that are capable of spacing the floor the way you do. There's just too much room to work for as many talented players as we have right now. Tim Bontemps here we go. Kevin Pelton and Tim Bontemps did the article at ESPN.com, and they talked about some of the tracking data that the NBA has, and they said the space covered by offense, so the space used on the court at any given time by offense, has increased by about 5% since the 2021-2022 seasons per Sports Info Solutions. In that same time span, the space covered by defense has increased by just 0.3%. Teams can't cover all of the space adequately enough when the ball movement, given the amount of space that's now stretched the court, exists there. So, Claudia, to that point, I don't know if there is a real way to put the toothpaste back in the tube on this because of just the way the math of the game's evolved.
And I have to say, I agree with Senior. I think bringing back the Bad Boy Pistons would be amazing and fun for viewership. But that also brings into the issue of now these star players have to play a certain amount of games to be considered for MVP and all of that. And that's sort of built into their contract. So if you bring in that physicality, where is the defense going to go the hardest on? It's the Lukas, it's the Tatums, it's the SGAs, the Jokers of the world. So I totally agree. I think in my mind, that's really the only way you can fix it. What else are you going to do? Sit down the players and say, listen, you got to play defense. Like, okay, they know that, right? So I don't think there really is a way to solve this. But I think if anything, yeah, it's the refs just don't make the game so much about them. Try and keep it safe, but, don't stop the play every other one.
I would agree, and I think listen, I won't say that there's not defense altogether on the perimeter. Teams are shooting as well as ever from three-point range, despite, according to this article again, an increase in the share of difficult contested or pull-up attempts rather than catch-and-shoot opportunities. Guys have been trying on the perimeter. I think we also have to account for, and Dad, this is the one thing we always talk about when we have these eras conversations of, could LeBron James and Kevin Durant go back and play in the 90s when everyone's crashing the lane and beating the hell out of them, is we've always said players adjust, and that's what's happened here.
Yes.
Players have adjusted to all of the room and space that they've got to operate now and are even better than ever. The shooting has gotten better because they've got more reps at the current spacing and the current math of basketball and what that's required of them skill set wise. I mean, hell, we've seen certain guys, especially bigs, change the entire course of their game in order to fit this now. So I do think this is also a skill thing, which, to the original point Claudia made, should be a net positive overall for the league. You've got so many gifted players who now have more space to show those gifts than ever before.
So we mentioned the Bad Boy Pistons. You know who is the executive vice president and head of basketball operations for the league? It's Joe Dumars. And for you younger people out there, Joe Dumars was part of the Bad Boys. And for those that don't know what we're talking about, Google it, and you will see a different form of basketball. And I'm not saying go back to that basketball. And I think at the end of the day, I'm in agreement with you guys, is I don't know if you can even toughen it up. If you guard the perimeter more when the ball goes down, swallow the whistle a little more, let it be a little more physical in the paint. I don't know if that's going to work. I'm not asking a return to bad boy basketball at all, but we're sitting here trying to think of things. I'm sure we'll have Jordan Cornette on a little bit later. We can ask him, a guy who's lived his life on a basketball court, so we can do that as well. So I don't know if there's an answer. I think the athletes are so much better, especially the bigs, the game. Now, I think the philosophy, Mike, is we can play defense, but we'd rather try and outscore this team than maybe stop this team.
I think that we have framed this the wrong way anyway. This isn't just an, NBA scoring's up problem. This is a continued devaluing of the regular season. I don't think we're going to be talking about this when we get to the postseason and everyone actually tries hard and cares and is motivated. This is just another bit of symptom of the root that is, hey, no one looks at the NBA's regular season as that valuable anymore. And so in the vein of fixing court storming the way I did yesterday, I've come up with my solution to fix the NBA's regular season. You ready for this one? 2 in-season tournaments. Oh, you think it's great that you won the first one in the fall? We're all just getting revved up then. We got to double it up. Another in-season tournament. We got to get these guys to buy in and care about it. More money bags on the court. More in-season action. More weird custom-made courts out there. This is where we get them. We just add another one in there. Adam Silver, you've got the tools. Now go out and make it work.
back to GoJo and Golic. Now, of course, the NFL Combine is about the skills and the players showcasing their talents, but the more fun part, which we talked about off the top of the show, is just the strange questions, which apparently Senior says there is a reason behind, but when we talk about some of them, you're really going to question that. So let's do this, guys. I'm going to throw them all at you, and first thing that comes to mind, just give me your answer. The first one we have is philosophical here. Would you rather be a cat or a dog?
So in the vein of these questions having a goal, I actually do think this is one where NFL teams want you to say dog, more so because dogs are obviously high energy, go-getters, and also pretty obedient. And I do think that that is a thing that NFL teams value, is someone that's going to go out there and execute and do what they're told, as opposed to cats that are a little bit more think for yourself, a little bit more self-sustaining. Cat would be like if you get Aaron Rodgers. You got to be a really talented cat in order to go out in a world of dogs and be someone that teams want to rock with.
I agree. I definitely agree. And really quickly on an aside, Mike, when you were preparing for Combine and Pro Day, when you were at you were at Exos, which is out here, did they prepare you for questions? I'm going to give my answer, but I just wanted to ask that really quick about what type of answers you should give.
Well, they prepared you for like the normal questions about like, oh, you know, if you were to get cut, what are you going to do after this? Like, you're not supposed to explain to them, oh, you know what, I want to give this another try, but this is what I got my degree in. This is what they don't want to hear that. They want to hear, oh, I'm going to get back in the gym and I'm going to work really hard so that I can come back and do this again. Because again, they don't want it to seem like you have other options or desires outside of football. So they prepare you for that stuff. I was not prepared for any sort of cat or dog questions during this process, and I can assure you that much.
All right, along those lines, I love all animals. We had a cat as well when you guys were younger, but we love dogs, have dogs. I would be a dog just because I like dogs better. So,
okay, I love
Claudia,
dogs
what
too.
about you, cat or dog?
You know, I had cats when I lived with an ex-boyfriend. I hated cats. He wanted them, and as cute as they were, I couldn't. I'm a dog girl. But also, I feel like cats are like sneaky, and they could get by defenders, and I don't know. Cam Newton 2011 said, I see myself more as a human being, so I think I'm with Newton there. Second question.
That's a fair question.
What color is chocolate, guys?
See, like this one, I don't know what sort of deep philosophical answer I'm supposed to give. It's brown. Like, chocolate's brown. I understand you could have white chocolate or dark chocolate. It's a little bit, but I'm thinking the tried and true, it's brown.
Well, that's, I guess if that's what you wanted to do, you could say, well, what kind of chocolate are you talking about? You know, you're talking about a white chocolate, dark chocolate. There's darker brown. There's brown. You know, give me a little more. I'd throw it back on the interviewer on that one and say, be more specific on the type of chocolate you're asking me about.
I would say chocolate is what you want it to be. I'd get really philosophical with it. I'd say depends on the situation, how I'm feeling. If I'm feeling white, it's white, dark, dark. That one is ridiculous. Third one, which really isn't any more sane. What kind of fish are you? Senior, I feel like this resonates with you. What kind of fish are you? Something come to mind?
Well, I love bass fishing. I'm a big bass fisherman. I like bass. The reason I like them is when they're hungry, they'll be down, you know, looking for food. And when they're not, they just kind of hang out. You know, that's what my couch is for and my iPad for Netflix. I would just kind of hang out. When I'm hungry, I get up and I move and I look for some food and I get some food and then I'm stagnant. So I'm kind of like a bass in that way.
I like that.
I want to go for just sheer mass here, especially as a former O-lineman. I want to be a bluefin tuna or an Atlantic bluefin tuna. They're like, I think I looked it up, 10 feet long and can weigh up to 2,000 pounds. You're just an absolute unit in the animal kingdom. And to be in the ocean, I want to be as big as possible because the ocean is scary as hell. I have no desire to actually go in there ever. I love being around the ocean. I live in Southern California. That belongs to them. I don't need to introduce us into the equation. I don't know if you feel any different about the ocean, Claudia, but I'm out on the ocean.
I love the ocean. It scares me, and that's why I love looking at it. I love swimming and the very close to shore. But I would be a Siamese fighting fish because they're pretty and they're cute and they stay in a little bowl. But if anybody comes in with them, they fight them because they want to be alone, which I get that. because I like being alone. People are cool, but you know.
I just looked up the image of this. It's almost got like a flowy dress on the back.
They're gorgeous, all different colors. So when I was younger, quick story, we bought a few, didn't realize they would kill each other. So I got 2 really pretty ones. I was all excited. The next morning I'm going to feed it and I'm like, oh my God, one of them died. So obviously, survival of the fittest. And that Siamese fighting fish lived on for a while. So that's what I would be. Anyways, they are beautiful.
Respect.
Go look them up. All right, 4th question. Yeah. Are you afraid of clowns? And I feel like the answer is supposed to be I'm not afraid of anything, but what do you guys think on this one?
You know what?
Listen,
I think all of us deep down in places that we absolutely want to talk about at parties can say clowns are scary as hell. I don't know who thought of clowns originally and said this is supposed to be a funny thing. Like, who's the weirdo that thought of the concept of a clown and decided, oh yeah, this is going to get with the giggles. This is going to be the thing that makes them laugh. Like, no, they're just lurking around dark corners or in sewer drains waiting for you to end your life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. If you were on the fence about this, just go watch the movie It, and you'll be done. The thing about clowns to me is, are they smiling at us or are they leering at us? That's what I don't know, and that's why I don't like them.
Well, that's the thing. It's just the paint that's smiling, but behind that, clearly they're trying to kill you, according to Golic Jr.
Yes, exactly.
I was going to say, well, the movie It, and then I would say the entire, Batman comic book series introducing the Joker ruined any chances that clowns had in the modern discourse. They were screwed after that. Yeah.
And not trying to offending, any clowns out there watching our show, but you're scary. Number 5, you're on a mountain. Picture this, in Alaska, on a bus going 100 miles per hour. Where are you sitting on the bus?
I am sitting. All right, Dad, you take this one first. I want to think about this.
I'm going to be driving. I want to be driving. We're going 100 miles an hour, and we're on that. I want to be in control of that thing to see what's going to happen. I'm very confident in my driving skills, so put me in the driver's seat there.
GoJo, are you confident in your dad's driving skills?
I'm pretty confident in my dad's driving skills, but I'll tell you who I'd be even more confident in and where I'm going to sit on this bus, next to Keanu Reeves. Because if I'm on a bus hurtling at an untold speed in a treacherous situation, I want to be next to the man that helped navigate it here. I don't know if we've got the speed bomb strapped to this. I don't know if Sandra Bullock's going to be there too, but I know Keanu Reeves is ready to handle that situation and get us all to safety.
I don't really care where I'm sitting. I just have fun with it. I'm probably going to die in the end, so I just strap it on, grab a drink. Throw some tunes on.
There you go.
Enjoy it. All right, last one. Now, actually, we have no more questions because I want to know what you guys would think, and if there's a specific player, what you would ask him. But the floor is yours, and GoJo, I know you have a few questions you brought off the top. So what is the question you would ask, and who would you ask?
So this is the question I wanted to ask you guys, and I would ask any sort of combine present young man is, if you're locked in a mall for 24 hours and you've got to be actively hunted by one of these two groups, which one are you picking? Would you rather be locked in a mall for 24 hours with a single gorilla or 5 black mamba snakes? Dad, go.
5 black mamba snakes. If they're hunting you, that gorilla is going to find you and you can't stop it. You can't climb out of your way. You can't do anything like that. The snakes, I'm going to try and come up with something. It's a mall, so there's a lot of things you can get to. A can of hairspray and a lighter. So I got a blowtorch. Can I get a liquid I can put on the ground in front of me and just stay with my back to a wall all night? And if the snakes approach, I now throw a match on that and I light them on fire. Not doing that to a gorilla. A gorilla is finding me and ripping me in half. So I will try and battle the snakes.
This is a very violent episode. I feel like we've talked about a lot of death and destruction. Senior, I gotta disagree though. Gotta go gorilla. Try to become friends with him.
Oh, Mike, we're gonna get your answer to this.
I just think that with the gorilla, it's trying to find me. I'm trying to find the snakes. I don't know where those guys are. And there's 5 of them. And they're fast as all hell. And dying by venom versus dying by being ripped in half by a gorilla, I don't know where I stand on that. The ripping might go quicker. And so that could be the option that I go for. All right, while we've been busy trying to hide from gorillas and outsmart a pack of snakes here, Dad's been ruminating on the combine question that he wants to ask us here. So, Dad, the floor is yours. What do you got?
Well, first I want to go back to the gorilla and the snake thing for a second because I chose the snakes because I feel I could battle them better. Again, 5 mambas or a gorilla who are actively hunting you in a mall for 24 hours. I feel I could put myself in a position to defend myself better against the snakes than the gorilla. Why are you choosing the gorilla? I mean, since it's hunting you, are you going to try and turn and hunt it? Or are you going to just try and run and hide for the 24 hours? So when you know it's hunting you and going to find you, you know the gorilla is going to find you.
There's so much food, though. I feel like the gorilla will just go for, malls. There's millions of places.
But he's hunting you.
Oh, okay.
He's hunting you. That's the thing about this question. You said they're hunting you.
I feel like I'd be friends with the gorilla.
I'm assuming he's a guy gorilla too, so he's easily distracted, and all of a sudden, if Auntie Anne's is firing up the pretzels, or God forbid, there's a Mrs. Fields or a Cinnabon store in there, there's no chance he's going to be able to avoid that sweet aroma. It's going to get him going a little bit, and that's when I'll be running over to Macy's or Nordstrom or whichever one of these stores has the most space, and then clouding myself in all of the clothing so that he can't smell the sweat, because apparently gorillas can smell either the musk of an unfamiliar gorilla or human sweat very well. And so I just need to keep myself calm and cool. Kind of like that in The Predator when you got to cover yourself with mud so that the infrared sensors of the Predator can't see you and find you out in the wild. I would just do that with sensibly priced stuff from the bargain rack.
So the only problem with that, Mike, is in knowing you that if the gorilla was in that area and you were trying to hide yourself, then it would come down to can the gorilla smell poop because you would poop your pants.
More than likely. I mean, yeah, it's a gorilla coming after you here. But then again, I would know exactly where and when the gorilla was coming from, thus to begin the pooping. Because with the snakes, you might not know until that last second. You might think, I'm chilling. I got this. I am killing this whole thing. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you just feel a whap, whap, whap. Because the black mambas, too, those things, they get multiple bites in there. And all of a sudden, you're looking up and you're dizzy and the fever's running and you're just dead.
All right, we're going to disagree on that. I'm definitely fighting the snakes.
What's your question? Do you have a question to ask us?
Oh, my question to the combine guys, or to you guys, if you could be a superhero, which superhero would you be? Because I think while it's a simple question, I think can tell a lot about a person on how they answer and who they choose on what they're looking to be.
GoJo, I feel like you have a good answer. I don't. I don't really know
superheroes. To be Hulk, man. I mean, Bruce Banner, you get to be smart as hell, and then you get to turn into a green guy that everybody is afraid of. Like, he is the nuclear option in every Marvel cinematic universe, in every comic. He's the one, it's like, and by the way, we got this dude back here. And who wouldn't want to be that dude? And also, like, man, to go in the weight room as Hulk, that'd be awesome. To just go in ragdoll weights and finally feel like all those meatheads I see on steroids at Gold's Gym, that'd be sick.
Is Batman
that's what I think. Is who?
Oh, there we go.
Is Batman a superhero? I'm bad. I don't really.
No, Batman is not a superhero. Now, in the context of superheroes, Batman is a superhero. Claudia, to go back, and I've talked about this, when Mike Greenberg and I were doing Mike and Mike at ESPN, we just brought this up as an ancillary thing. I don't even know how it came up. It took over like 3 days of our show. Because Greeny felt Batman was a superhero. I felt he was not a superhero, just a very rich person with a lot of tools at his disposal. But I would say this, that if I was a team and I asked this to a quarterback, I would like my quarterback to say, I'd like to be Batman. Because he's smart. He uses all the tools around him. You know, the type of person, because I would pick Superman. I just want to fly. I want to be strong. I want to have laser vision. But I think teams would like players, quarterbacks, to say they'd like to be Batman.
Sign me up, Pat. I'm right here. Right here.
She's ready to go. She's ready to be Batman for you. That being said, I do wonder if the Batman and Superman discourse is the perfect illustration of the modern NFL quarterback conversation, where we've seen and heard a very frustrated Tom Brady recently talking about watching these guys with more athletic ability not solve problems from the neck up, not look for, all right, I'm getting blitzed here, where's my outlet, where's my hot, how am I reading through this, and just relying on their physical ability to get them out of there. I feel like old quarterbacks, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, a little bit more of the Batman route, where what we always hear with Batman, and it annoys the ever-loving hell out of me because you're not always going to have prep time. Sometimes you're going to have to roll up and scrap. And when Batman's just got to roll up and scrap, it's not going to go as cute because he's so based on prep time and film study and diligence there versus, man, hey, listen, Mahomes, he might be combining some of the Batman stuff now, but that's Superman over there. Hey, I'm rolling into the part. Yep. I'm rolling in here out of the hospital with more than you've ever had right now. And when it comes time to solve these problems, I got every tool in the belt I need to use it. Everyone's trying to find him, Josh Allen. They want Superman now as opposed to the Batman they were getting then.
That's fair.
See, there you go. There you go. I think that's a good breakdown. And again, Batman's not a superhero.
Amen. Batman slander will continue until morale improves around here. Speaking of morale, Claudia, we've had a bunch of interesting yesterday, and we will get to coming up in just a few minutes here. A lot of the press conference sound we heard yesterday as GMs, coaches, and otherwise took to the podium at the Combine yesterday to start to get their agendas out of there. And one of them was interesting from the Cleveland Browns and their front office about proposing something new for the NFL's trade deadline.
Yeah, Browns Berry is calling for a pushback on the trade deadline. So right now it's around week 8 and he wants it to be week 10. And he actually has pretty good reason for it. It's interesting. We have the sound for you now.
If you look at us compared to the other major sports leagues, if you look at their seasons by like calendar days or games played, baseball and basketball, they have the trade deadline at when 65% of the games are played. Hockey's at 78%. Currently, we're at 45%. Our proposal would move it to about 55% of the games played.
So it's been this way after week 8 for over a decade, but he does make a pretty good point. Do you guys think this makes sense? Do you see any negative effects of this if it does go forward?
Dad, I was trying to kind of go big brain on this and think maybe if you gave some teams more time, would they then overthink this and sit on their hands a little bit? But I generally think he tends to be right with more information. And with what we've seen, a combination of younger GMs all throughout the league right now. You look at going into this last season, 14 GMs had been hired since 2021. You're dealing with a lot of new blood and people that had been more inclined to get out here and trade. You look at going back to 2012 when they trained it, the average amount of trades at the deadline between October 1st through the deadline window, there were an average of 4.5 trades a year from 2013 to 16. 8.5 from 2017 to 2018, and from 2019 to 2022, an average of 14.25 trades every year. So some is great, more is better. The NFL's trade deadline becoming an actual thing has been huge for the league and been a great talking point for them that I think they absolutely want more of.
I agree. Listen, for most of my radio and TV career post-football, approaching the NFL deadline was just another day that ended in Y. Nothing was happening. It never was. We were always waiting for the big baseball trades to go on by the trade deadline. Who were the buyers? Who were the sellers? Now, you mentioned the numbers. In the last few years, it's up to over 14 trades that go on. So it is a big part of the NFL. We've seen it work. Just look at Christian McCaffrey, but there's others as well, you know, from TJ Hawkinson going from Detroit to Minnesota and others. So, and I like Andrew Berry's thought process about it, of the percentage of games done, so you have a better idea of where you are in the season before we get to the buyers and sellers. For the NFL, it's less than the halfway point now that we have 17 games after week 8. Whereas we know, as he mentioned, the percentage in hockey and in baseball. So I think I understand and agree with his philosophy of give us a few more games so we have a better idea of where we are to decide if we want to be buyers or sellers.
Yeah, in a league full of high-level competitors, I think while people always talk about tanking and bring that stuff up, generally everyone's wired to try and go out and max out their situation as best they can. And so if you give them even 2 more weeks where all of a sudden, hey, it's solidified, we're not making the playoffs, things aren't going to go the way, maybe even more teams then would be inclined to go and get an invitation to the party where they start dealing some of their assets and loading up for the future. Speaking of loading up for the future, coming up next, let's kick off hour number 2, taking a look at some of the future plans for a bunch of organizations across the NFL that got laid out yesterday.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. It's a fun time during the NFL Combine as we try to dissect everything said by anybody over there in Indianapolis. And we're going to do that now, but we're going to use a truth meter, guys, okay? So 1 is a flat-out lie, and 5 is the truth. We're going to give you some sound, and you can react. So up first is Vikings GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah on trading their star in Justin Jefferson. Here's what he said.
Is there a world where you would ever consider making him available in a trade?
That is not something that's once crossed my mind. You got a blue player, blue person. You try and keep those, as many of those as you can.
Never, ever considered a trade. Never crossed his mind. On a scale from 1 to the truth, I guess, so flat out lie to the truth, 1 through 5. What do you guys think on this one?
Yeah, I actually believe him on this one. Like, a player the caliber of Justin Jefferson, probably not one you actually mess with. It's fun fodder for us, and Kwesi's probably been honest to a fault at times during his tenure so far with the Vikings, and so I'll say I believe this, Dad, and this one, to me, seems like the truth. They'd be smart, especially with a team that's in flux at quarterback. The last thing you want to do is, if you are going to introduce either a young quarterback coming in behind Kirk Cousins or bring someone in new altogether as a veteran, you're going to want to set them up with the best wide receiver in the NFL.
I'll never, to your grading scale, Claudia, I will never go all the way a 5 because, so I'd say 4.5 to the truth. Why I won't go all the way to a 5 is because you always answer the phone. Always. The phone rings, you answer. And if someone gives you an ungodly, offer for someone on your team, maybe you for a split second think about it. But I agree with Mike. I don't think this is going to happen. I don't know why you would. We do have the quarterback situation. Kirk Cousins may be back there. That guy has won the business part of the NFL for a while with the extra money that you have as well. But Justin Jefferson, for how important wide receivers are in the NFL of today, he is not a guy you get rid of.
Yeah, I would say with Kwesi, too, like he said last summer, they were really close to a deal. They have, out of respect for Justin Jefferson and his camp, decided, hey, we're not going to talk about this a ton publicly and make this a big spectacle. Obviously, it was a frustrating year for Justin Jefferson. The quarterback situation is not what he had experienced so far in his young career there, and so he had to weather a lot of that. He had to deal with injury, and so all things considered, you've got a guy that appears to want to be there. We talked to him at the Super Bowl. He's a guy that also wants Kirk Cousins back there because he doesn't want to have to reset the clock on his time. Very few veteran players do, so I think this gets done. I think the more pressing question becomes, what do they actually do at quarterback right now? We saw the news the other day that they hired Josh McCown as the quarterbacks coach for there, and I saw Jordan Reed, ever the content master over at ESPN, one of their great draft analysts, saying, Josh McCown was a high school coach not too long ago and coached one Drake May in high school, so having a lot of people wondering what the quarterback plans for the Minnesota Vikings are going to look like in the first round of the draft coming up, but I do think that becomes the more pressing issue. So, Claudia, what else do we got here on the Truthometer?
The Truthometer. Next up, we have Falcons head coach now Raheem Morris on the quarterback situation. Of course, he took over for what was sort of a failing season in Arthur Smith. 7-10 they finished. That was, of course, Heineke and Desmond Ridder under center. So here's what he had to say about the quarterback situation if he would even be here today.
That is more of a credit to the people that were in the building with me still, and some of the people that are not there now. And what they've been able to do. If we had better quarterback play last year in Atlanta, I might not be standing here. And they would have the ability to be talking about those things. But right now, if we can focus on some of those things and do some of that, I think that'll give us the best chance to go out there and win football games.
And guys, you look at the roster outside of the quarterback position, and yeah, that makes sense. This was a team that was a reason in the conversation for Bill Belichick being sort of ready to win games, a quarterback and a head coach away from it. So what do you guys think on this one?
Boy, that was a brutal level of honesty for guys that could still be wandering around the building at this point, man. And listen, we have no idea. Raheem Morris may have had these conversations with guys. It's a bottom line league, Dad, right. As you know. They're not going to pull punches, especially for Raheem Morris, who knows, hey, when this goes south, you never know if you're guaranteed these chances again. And so it's an interesting tone to strike publicly. I don't know if a lot of people would necessarily do that more often than not. And I don't know how you feel about that overall in going that route. It seems a bit harsh publicly, especially coming from Raheem Morris, a guy who is lauded by so many of the players as being a real player's coach in the way that he approaches things.
Yeah, you know how I am about all locker room talk, Mike, and players talking with them amongst each other and clearing air, or a coach and player. And you're right. We don't know what conversations he's had with Ritter or with Heineke, but I agree. I'm not a big fan of singling out a position here. I'd say you look overall, we are under 5, whatever our record was, what we're looking to do, we're looking to improve. To me, I have never had a problem with coaching answers, with the very stagnant, be boring. Yes, okay, be boring. I don't have a problem with that. I know people want to hear the truth. I know it's great for talk shows. I get all that, but give me boring. Give me cliche answers if I'm a coach or I'm a player, and I'm good with it. I've always been that way, and I always will be. So to mention the one position, because let's be honest, I guess we could say on the other side is the most players are usually pretty self-aware of what's going on, right? And I think Ritter and Heineke could both look at what they did, and if they heard that comment, would say, yeah, I can't really argue with it, but why did it have to be a public comment? Because if they draft a quarterback, that's going to be by action saying the same thing basically Raheem Morris said, verbally there. But overall, and I know it's a little thing, and it's at the end of the day, is it, oh my God, I can't believe he said it? No, it's not. But I've just never been a fan of singling out a player or a position like that publicly.
Yeah, I guess, listen, Raheem Morris is a guy who we've heard testimony from guys who have played for him. Love playing for this dude. I mean, Jalen Ramsey, who was out there with him for a bit, chimed in as soon as this hire got made and said Atlanta just got, in his estimation, the best coach, or if not one of the best coaches in the NFL. And trust is gained and dropped and lost in buckets, right? So he's got a lot of time under task with those guys that have shown him the love there. But this is one of those spots there I would always prefer you had our back in public versus that, because everybody, to your point, is saying that. We can all see this, right? I mean, you look at last year for Desmond Ritter, he had a half, like if we're using this as the metric, he had a half Winston. He had a 12 touchdown, 12 interception season, the perfect symmetry on both sides between success and failure. We knew it wasn't good enough. We highlighted it all year. To hear that from the head coach going in when you'd say, all right, I want to set the tone that I'm going to have our players' backs in public, even if we got to be critical private, is probably more my speed like you. But again, I don't think it's going to bite Raheem Morris in the long run, because this is so obvious to everyone. They got to change the quarterback situation. And Claudia, I think a lot of people expect them to be active at the top of the draft because of that.
Active at the top of the draft, but I also want to ask you guys on sort of a confidence meter. You talked about how important it is that the players do like him. An issue that a lot of people said with Smith last season was that he's not really using the roster to his advantage. You have Bijan Robinson on the ground. You have Pitts. You have London. These guys who can be huge playmakers, but nobody really stood out last season as they were expected to. So you talked about the players liking him. What's your confidence level on him sort of using this roster to his advantage, hopefully more so than Arthur Smith did?
Yeah, it seemed like active sabotage at certain points, especially for Bijan Robinson and everything we knew he was capable of and saw in certain spurts early in the season before inexplicably, especially in the red zone, he just became someone that they put on the shelf. So Zach Robinson coming over with Raheem Morris, was a quarterback's coach, I believe, last year with the Rams, comes from that coaching tree. Young guy there, going to be at the helm calling offense for the first time for the Atlanta Falcons. And so you'd imagine it's going to be an offshoot somewhat of the Shanahan-McVay tree. And some of it is always with these guys, especially with Sean McVay out there. I think the one thing we have to remember is a lot of this is going to be predicated on who you have at quarterback. The offenses that Sean McVay ran when he had Jared Goff versus the stuff that he implemented once he got Matthew Stafford over there, doing more of the spread, drop back, 4 and 5 wide receiver sets with a quarterback that could push it more downfield. A lot of that changed what they were willing to do. And so I'd imagine Zach, coming from that brain trust, is probably going to have some of that. And it's going to be largely dependent on, hey, Dad, are they going up in the draft and they trying to get one of these young top quarterbacks by trading up in the first round? Are they going to go after a guy like a Justin Fields and try and get him home and use some of the gifts he has in the run game, which have not been something that we've traditionally seen used in a lot of these offensives in this coaching tree? So I'm interested and cautiously optimistic, because I believe Zach's a young, smart guy in this league that comes from the right stuff.
Yeah, I look forward to this offense. I really do. Wide receiver, tight end, running back. And do you bring in not draft a quarterback, but bring in a younger quarterback and maybe get yourself another wide receiver and really load up on that side of the ball. Defensively, they were right around top 10 overall, top 10 against the pass, middle of the pack against the run. So the defense wasn't bad at all either. Obviously, you need to do some tinkering there as well. But I think it's a nice area for whatever quarterback is going to come in. If you get a young quarterback, a drafted quarterback, you're giving them some pretty damn good weapons to deal with right out of the gate. The cupboard is not bare on the offensive side for a brand new quarterback. And then, like I said, if it's a veteran or a quarterback who's been in the league a couple of years, you can hit the ground running a little more.
So, and I think in all of this too, if you're looking specifically, like we have seen no problem for the Rams wide receivers. And so you would imagine, especially Zach Robinson, who's a former quarterback himself, coming over, they're going to spin the rock a little bit in the air. But I would say for people that are wanting to make sure Bijan Robinson gets the love he deserves, remember at the beginning of the Rams tenure, how infatuated Sean McVay was with Todd Gurley as the centerpiece of that offense. And then this past season, look at what they did with Kyron Williams under center and what a difference maker he was for this team. This is a Falcons offensive line that was a better run blocking group than pass blocking group overall. So I would say, given all of the DNA of the parts involved, we can expect a big uptick for Bijan Robinson coming into next season as year one of Raheem Morris gets started here. Claudia, let's keep this moving and get to more trade rumors surrounding star NFL wide receivers.
So, GoJo, are you saying I should draft Bijan again? Because I did last season and I had to trade him pretty quickly.
Ready to get hurt.
I drafted
hurt again. There is no doubt.
Raiders GM Tom Telesco on Devontae Adams trade rumors. He says there's no plans to trade. We don't have sound on this because he was very simple and short with it. He's a Raider, he told reporters. Now the question is, do you think Devontae Adams wants to be a Raider with the messy quarterback situation? Josh Jacobs also in this conversation. Of course, you have these two mega stars that really deserve to be on a roster with talent around them. What is your take on this? Do you think Telesco is speaking the truth? And as Senior said, there's never 100% truth to everything because they'll always pick up the phone. But what's your take on this sort of situation with the Raiders in general and Adams and Jacobs in particular?
Dad, this seems to be a what you see is what you get outfit right now. I think that's why players have been so refreshed since Antonio Pierce took over, because it's a former player who deals pretty aggressively into shooting these guys straight so far. We've heard Antonio Pierce and Max Crosby talking in the offseason. We've heard about the Mahomes rules and the way that he's talked about all these things. And so this seems like an organization that's made it pretty clear we're going to be aggressive. And I think that means I expect them to retain Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs. I think they're going to try and find a way. We've talked about it. Josh Jacobs, of the running backs right now that we heard yesterday aren't going to be franchise tagged, he's the one you'd probably feel most comfortable taking a multi-year chance on, given that he's 26 years old, he's a bit underrated as a pass catcher out of the backfield, and he's a guy who's already been incredibly productive in this offense. So I think you're going to see both those guys come back. And to me, then, what does that signal about how aggressive they're willing to be in the draft or in free agency when it comes to a guy like Kirk Cousins looming out there waiting in the wings, Russell Wilson impending, probably going to get cut here in the next couple of weeks by the Denver Broncos, or what they're going to do at that spot? I think what they do with these two guys, which is going to be re-sign them, is going to go a long way of showing us just how ready the Raiders are to try and go out there and get this thing going now.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if both weren't there. I think you can sign Jacobs to that multi-year deal because, again, it's not going to hit you too hard in the wallet, right? It's a running back. I'm sorry, they're still not going to break the bank, so it's going to be a palatable cap number. For Devontae Adams, this is the last year of a palatable cap number, right? His cap number this year is a little over $25 million. So, and next year is when you're going to get into the issue and what you want to do, because next year his cap hit is $44 million. The year after that, $44 million. But also next year, his dead cap is just $15 million. So you have a way to kind of get out of that and it not kill you too much. The year after that, the dead cap is $7 million. So I think after this year, you're going to need to decide what you're going to do. You're going to restructure with him because you can't go in with him having a $44 million cap hit. So it's either get rid of, deal with the dead cap, or, try and restructure it, make it a longer deal to make it a lower cap space. So they have kind of this year to decide what they're going to do. Is Aiden O'Connell going to be the quarterback where my God, you need weapons for him. Or if you're going to bring in a veteran to have him hit, again, I use the term hit the ground running with a Josh Jacobs and a Devontae Adams on your offensive side.
Let's put it this way. If they go and make sure that if they don't trade, Devontae Adams and they re-sign Josh Jacobs, Aiden O'Connell's not lining up under center week 1. I just don't think there's a
I would
world.
agree.
We met him out in Vegas. He's a great dude. He performed very well, especially given his draft status this season. But I don't think the signals that those moves would send indicate to me that you're comfortable with a second-year player who's a mid-round draft pick going out and being the guy that you think can get it done in the division, where you're talking openly about, hey, it's Patrick Mahomes. That's the boogeyman that we got to deal with now. And so I think you're going to see a team that one way or another is going to try and pry their guy out of the draft or pry their guy out of free agency to try and reset this thing in a hurry, because to your point, this is kind of the same thing that the Giants are on right now, where you got to find answers to that question in a hurry about some of the important pieces of your team. For the Raiders, it's going to be wide receiver, like you mentioned. All right, this gets a little bit unwieldy as we go forward, but for a team like the New York Giants, Dad, it's also that question of, all right, now you got to do this in terms of Daniel Jones, where you're on ostensibly the last year of the deal he just signed. That was a multi-year deal that really had 2 years of serious guaranteed money that he's now in the second year of. And you've got to mortgage everything. And for them, it's a lot easier with quarterback where, hey, you can go and get a bunch of good weapons around Daniel Jones to help him out. They got to attack receiver. They've got to bolster the offensive line. They've got a bunch of needs going into this draft. But your consolation prize is, all right, if Daniel Jones doesn't pan out in the body of that, you get to move on from him and put a quarterback in a situation that got better because of the things you gave him.
Yeah, he does. And I don't know what kind of offense he's going to have, right? Barkley's going to be gone. Right, a guy who runs the ball and can catch the ball. Do we feel they have enough of the wide receiver position? And as you mentioned, help on the O-line. So I think, unfortunately for him, we keep questioning whether he should have got a deal or not. Got a deal. Now, should he be around? And the shame of it is for him is there just isn't a lot of firepower around him to help.
If you were the Giants, Dad, you've got the 6th overall pick in the draft. Let's assume you don't trade up or move or do anything serious now. Would you go one of the offensive tackle prospects or one of the wide receiver prospects with your top pick to help Daniel Jones?
I think in this day and age of, while I still think the tackle position is unbelievably important, we have seen a shorter passing game in the NFL where the ball is coming out. So I think I would go with a wide receiver. We are seeing wide receivers make instant impacts in the NFL offenses today. And the glut of really good to great wide receivers in this draft, especially that high, I think might be too good to pass up. So I think I would go down that road.
Boy, it's tough for me because you've got Evan Neal there, and it took Andrew Thomas a long time to develop on the other side into a guy who's now looks like he's going to be a perennial Pro Bowler, flirt with an All-Pro at left tackle for the Giants. I don't know what they're going to be willing to do with Evan Neal, who was the top pick in the 2022 draft for them. He was drafted 7 overall in that season. You could maybe kick him down to the inside because, Dad, this goes all the way back to the Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase draft for me, where we had the ultimate meme-worthy debate surrounding what the Bengals should have done at that spot. And it's worked out for both sides, right? Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase have gone on to be incredibly successful, impactful pieces on 2 high-end playoff teams, one of whom has made it to a Super Bowl already, and the other was knocking on the doorstep before a second half collapse. But I would always err on the side of protection. I think if I was the Giants in that spot and Joe Alt's on the board, he's the most plug-and-play, day-one ready tackle in this draft right now between him and Olu Fashanu out of Penn State. I would take Joe Alt in there. He's a guy that can play, I think, on both sides of the line. You put him opposite Andrew Thomas, you get Evan Neal down inside with a little more space, and you've got a running game that's all of a sudden even more viable, being offset by the loss of Saquon Barkley, and then helping them develop time in a draft that we know is pretty deep at wide receiver, where you can get some other talent to help out your quarterback as well.
And the Giants are have $30 million of, to spend over the cap. So maybe you get a wide receiver that way, depending. So we'll see. Like I said, we differ a little bit there in the offenses of today. I might lean to wide receiver because the ball comes out a little quicker. But at that pick, you shouldn't be able to go wrong either way.
I just think we saw Daniel Jones on his back far too many times last year to start anywhere other than the biggest direct line from quarterback to the people trying to hurt your large, very expensive young man.
GoJo and Golic. Shohei Ohtani is back doing Shohei Ohtani things. He went yard, but this time in blue and white. But of course he goes yard in his spring training debut, guys. But apparently his manager, Dave Roberts, didn't realize he's a unicorn. He said, as I'm learning very quickly, he's built differently. But didn't we already know that, guys?
I feel like you don't pony up almost $1 billion without believing that the young man's better is better than everybody else is better. That man wallops a baseball in a way few people do.
Well, apparently some people forgot because everybody got going. Here's the call now.
Swung on, hit high in the air to left and deep. This ball carrying. This ball is gone. It is Dodger debut. Shohei Ohtani brings them to their feet. A 2-run home run. That's what they've been waiting for.
That's what they've been waiting for. That's also why he got $700 million. And now the fact that he's not pitching is even scarier because we'll probably see even more of those yet. At DraftKings, he's third in the odds for MVP at plus 650. Of course, Ronnie possibly running it back at plus 550. Then you have Mookie. Look at the top six, though. You have 3 Dodgers, which, when you talk about the MVP conversation, sort of makes it tough. We said this with Jayson Tatum and the Celtics. When you have depth like that and a lineup like that, how do you give votes to just one guy?
It's so true. The depth of talent on a team that has become baseball's monstars is absolutely going to make that a difficult go. But we also know that's not going to be the metric by which they are judged. Nobody is going to care at the end of the season if one of the Dodgers has an MVP added to their mantle. Dad, this is going to be solely about Does this Dodgers team win it all, or do they not? It is a binary. And I understand in sports, especially in baseball, that's a dangerous thing. The idea of wire-to-wire number ones is almost something that never happens in this sport. But there is one speed and one expectation for this sport. And if they don't get there, everybody is going to have a field day tearing them down.
So, again, we'll go through the list. We talked about it, the Atlanta Braves going into the postseason last year, if they need to close the deal. We talked about the Celtics this morning. Multiply the Braves thing by 100 for the Celtics if they need to win this thing for how good they are. Now multiply that by another 100 or 1,000 for the Dodgers to say, you want to talk about something where the regular season doesn't matter, and it should be a given to fans out there that the Dodgers are going to roll through this in 162 games where obviously nothing is guaranteed. But yeah, this is win it all or be an ungodly disappointment, even though Shohei has only taken $2 million a year of the potential $70 million a year he could be taking. And it's when you see players up close too, it's such a different thing. In calling a couple of games this year for Westwood One was in Philly. Joel Embiid, I got to see him on the sideline for a moment, just, a quick chat. And it's just like, you can't believe the size until you're next to them. It's just like watching these guys play basketball. You can't really appreciate it until you're at the arena and you see their size and what they're able to do. And then with baseball players as well, one of the LA games that I called, I don't know if it was the Chargers or the Rams, but it was after Shohei had signed and he was down on the sidelines before the game and was over by him. And again, you look at him and you're like, oh my God, what an imposing figure he is, not only obviously pitching, but hitting, but just as an athlete of the size that he is. So it is amazing what he has done. As Claudia mentioned with the home run yesterday, he's 1 for 3, had a strikeout, ground out, and do a double play as well. But everybody got what they wanted, the home run, opposite field home run for him. And the expectation is so high for him, though, interestingly enough, basically as a DH, right? That's it. No pitching this year. Again, he'll go through. He just had the reconstructive surgery in September, so we knew he was going to hit this year. We won't pitch this year, so you have to wait till next year to get them both. But boy, it's appointment viewing every time the guy goes to the plate.
I guess that's the exciting thing, and we're always talking about this in Major League Baseball versus some of the other sports, but a guy that legitimately is a ticking time bomb. Every time he's up at bat, this becomes possible in a way that's extremely exciting for the viewer. And you're right that part of it is he's so physically imposing. I mean, these guys are just built. It's high-level athlete no matter what it is. I had the same feeling standing next to Mike Stanton, the now Yankees star, who at the time was playing for the Marlins when I was in college. He was a high school tight end for my good buddy Dane Christ when they were at Notre Dame High School out here in California. And standing next to the dude, it felt like standing next to an NFL tight end. He was carved out of marble, and Shohei's the same way. He's this big, hulking, massive humanity who produces, I think, what we have to add to the list of the best sounds in sports. Like we've talked about it, the doink off an upright in a football game is a sound that you can just call out from anywhere. It's sweet, it's wonderful, the sound of a huge hit. And I would say the sound specifically of a Shohei Ohtani home run. Because there are other people that hit baseballs. Shohei tries to kill baseballs every single time he makes contact with them. And so I would add that near the top of the list of the best sounds in sports that we have right now.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Start of baseball season is so much fun. There's always the different smell in the air and the feel of everything and the different storylines. But bottom line is what we said, this storyline is so much is expected out of Shohei Ohtani and so much is expected out of this team that it should be a whole hum until we get to the postseason for them.
And it is. That's going to be the expectation for them. It's going to be fun to ride that roller coaster. I've said every sport is better when you've got a big bat. And while people out in Los Angeles are pumped to have more stars and another reason to head out there, for everyone else in Major League Baseball, this isn't quite going to be what people wanted out of the Houston Astros hate tour after the sign stealing scandal that went on with those guys. But this is going to be, I think, a pretty united front of people that aren't the Dodgers pretty ticked off that one of the other big market teams come in and is just trying to buy their way to a championship in a way that's off-putting to a lot of people. So I think we're going to see a pretty united rest of Major League Baseball against a lot of these guys. But you're also going to see some scorned lovers in all this, Dad. I loved the story in The Athletic about the guys in the Toronto Blue Jays and the various ways that everybody internalized that saga. Because remember, we had the whole back and forth where we thought for a couple of days, oh, Shohei Ohtani, he's on a private jet heading to Toronto to sign with the Blue Jays, and it ends up being the dude from Shark Tank. But my favorite of all of that was Alek Manoah, one of the pitchers for the Toronto Blue Jays, who found out that they weren't signing Shohei Ohtani right before he was going to walk down the aisle at his wedding. He said his dad told him right before he was getting ready to go. And I have to wonder how his wife feels in that moment, because I got to imagine there was a pretty visceral reaction from dude there. Like, you're human. You're a guy on a team right now, and you see this is the kind of game-changing guy that can change the course of our season, and all of a sudden, you're getting ready for the other biggest moment of your life if you're Alek Manoah and getting ready to marry the woman of your dreams. And right before that, like, I got to put this one on Dad. Like, you giving him that news right before he's supposed to go and say, I do, that's foul behavior. And I'd be, if I was his wife, looking at my future father-in-law like, dude, how are you trying to do this to me right now?
Yeah, I would agree. I think you have to pick your spots with good or bad news, and you guys learned that when you were in college with sometimes some of the news we would have to call you guys with that would crush your day, and we would choose not to do it in certain times.
Oh, no, let's have this out right here. Let's have this out right here. In college, when we'd be getting ready for finals, we had on 2 occasions our family dogs die at home. And my parents released the information. They didn't tell us for like a week and a half because they said they didn't want to screw us up mentally during finals. So we'd call home, and looking back on it after, my parents would be super short. I'd hear them sniffling in the background. They're trying to choke back tears. Claudia, what do you think, as an outsider hearing this, the idea of them withholding that information from us?
I think it 100% is fair. I think it's great parenting, and also it never should have been at the wedding, because as he kissed his now wife, all he saw was Shohei Ohtani, and that's not right.
Oh, what a visual. That is so true. I agree with that. I agree with what you said, Claudia, and Mike with what you said. That's on Dad. That's on Dad giving out that bit of information before. Why would you give it out then?
Terrible timing.
I mean, there's no way he's going to find out while he's walking down the aisle. Is somebody going to whisper to him, from the people in attendance? So why do it there? I don't get it.
And he's crying.
That one's all on Dad.
A tear comes to his eyes. Wife's like, what's wrong, babe? We didn't get Shohei. Not happy.
He's sliding the ring onto his finger. He's like, this could have been a World Series ring. Jesus Christ. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. here, and we said some is great, more is better. There aren't enough Notre Dame grads in the media, so we got to stick together, and that means we get to bring our next guy in, one of our favorites, Jordan Cornette, host over at NBC Sports and college basketball analyst, hoops analyst overall, kind enough to give us some time here on a Wednesday. Jordan, what's going on, brother?
It's good to be on with guys that I'm fans of and even better friends of. I'm excited to be on with you guys. A lot going on in the sports world, so perfect time to be on.
Huh. Man, you're not kidding. Well, I saw you were very fired up the other day. We're getting towards March Madness now. We wanted to have you on to talk some college basketball in addition to a bunch of other stuff, but it's impossible to go through the college basketball conversation right now without running into the passion surrounding the court storming controversy. I saw you fired up talking about it the other day, and just what an important part of the sports has been, not only overall, but for your personal history as well, just what this means to the game. You think it's something that shouldn't go away?
Look, I just feel like everyone wants to be the smartest guy in the room, smartest gal in the room, and provide a solution for things. Oh, here's how we can fix this. Not everything needs to be fixed. Not everything needs a brilliant mind to come in that's not in the arena and say, let's change this and this is how we should do it. No. We're already in a world in collegiate athletics where I hardly recognize it anymore, where NIL, for better or for worse, rules the day, where transfer portal, for better or worse, rules the day. And it no longer resembles the sport that I grew up loving and was fortunate enough to play. And for me, this is one of the purest forms that still remains in the sport. Is there a percentage of danger? 0.005. So to keep the inner fabric of it is absolutely imperative to me because we're changing everything. And bigger than that, guys, I just felt a lot of hypocrisy kind of oozing off some of these guys and coaches. Coaches I respect, coaches I'm friends with. But to listen to Coach John Shire pontificate from his ivory tower about how this needs to change, where were you week one when Duke football beat Clemson? And all those students at your institution that you're fiercely trying to protect, where were you on your soapbox talking about this is unacceptable? It's always the coaches on the heels of a loss, raw emotion, and they decide to redirect it to this silly place of we got to end court storming. Could somebody get hurt? Certainly. That same young man or young woman could get hurt at a concert that they're going to if the mob starts moving around in a certain way. I just don't appreciate it because it's a misdirection from you lost the game. And further than that, Kyle Filipowski, I've been in that spot, not as an elevated Duke basketball player where every win probably results in a court storm, but I've been a part of them. And what you know as an athlete is the game's over. Even if there's a few seconds left on the clock, get to the side, find an exit, have some wherewithal, have some understanding. Like, to me, it's overblown. It's a focus that it doesn't need to be on, and it needs to stay in the game.
All right, wow, that's a heck of a take. I like that because I'd like to see court stormings continue, whether you can tinker with it or not for the safety of a player. We'll wait and see. As far as the other thing, one of the other things that went on last night, obviously that can't. Texas Tech, Kentucky, you got bottles being thrown from the stands from the Texas Tech side. Their coach getting on the microphone saying, knock that off. I mean, that's something that obviously you got to come down hard on, correct?
Yeah, and that should be something that, and I do believe, and I'm not certain with every conference, but there's penalties tangibly with technicals handed out on the floor that can cost teams. And I absolutely believe that should be part of it. And you know, it was a bad foul, but Texas Tech has to be better in that. I appreciate their coach getting up there, but we've seen that before in years past. I remember there was a Jim Boeheim moment in the early 80s against Georgetown where he got up there and said, look, we're not going to do this. I don't care about the game. I'll call the game off if our fans can't behave better. That is criminal behavior. The other one is fans being fans and celebrating with their fellow students. One I am absolutely for. The other one, there's no place for, no question.
Certainly those extracurriculars have been a dominant part of the headlines, but a lot of them have also been tied to upsets that we've seen around the sport, right? You had UConn not too long ago get knocked off on the road by Creighton. Obviously, the Duke-Wake Forest upset, Arizona getting knocked off by Washington State a couple of weeks ago. Jordan, down the stretch of the season, as we're nearing March, where it's supposed to be your final form, how have a lot of these upsets changed your perspective on who you think should ultimately be the favorites that we're talking about going into tournament time?
Junior is a guy who's never won his bracket. Feel free to mute me as we go through this and talk about it. But what I have come to realize is this part of the season rarely matters because it's kind of like the dead period in recruiting. Teams are kind of hit their fatigue level and understanding that they're gearing up for a second portion of the season. So, for example, a UConn team who had rattled off, I think, 13 conference wins and by an average margin of like plus 17, they were due for one. Creighton was ripe and ready to bring them there. And Creighton, I think, hit 12 threes in the first stanza. They were fired up. Does that change my opinion that UConn's the best team in the country? Absolutely not. I was on hand for UConn and Marquette. 1-4 on a Saturday afternoon nearly 2 weeks ago. And I watched this UConn team absolutely dismantle them and generate points in every vertical possible, whether it be in transition, whether it be in second chance because they're one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country, led by Donovan Klingett, whether it be with the three ball, whether it be with Tristan Newton leading the paces, arguably the conference player of the year right there, I believe, neck and neck with Tyler Golic. That team is dominant. Now, what I would say focus on at this time of the year, and this is how I'm going to redirect it to be better with my brackets, watch a little bit of like the A10. Watch a little bit of like the Southern Conference. Watch some of these teams that are maybe really good in their league that aren't getting a ton of pub. Everyone knows about Dayton in the Atlantic 10. But do you know about Loyola if Loyola happens to win that conference? Do you know what Coach Drew Valentine is doing there with that group? Do you know how they play and how their style could contrast beautifully in the tournament because it's about matchups? And St. Peter's coach famously said he's a fighting fan. It's about styles and how they match up. Well, that's a style that's disruptive, but Loyola probably has to go and win the A10 tournament. They're fully capable of that as they sit there right up top near Dayton and Richmond at the front. So that's what I would caution people to do. Don't overreact, because clearly I'm against overreactions right now in this space and time, but go ahead and inform yourself about some of the mid-majors right now.
So just a couple minutes left here, Jordan. How deep will this year's tournament be as far as contenders?
That's a great question, Big Mike. I would say I like Houston a lot. I like UConn a lot. The biggest story for me, and maybe it's because I'm covering a lot of Big Ten right now, but it's Zach Edey and Purdue. I wonder if those guards can do enough to carry you. Braden Smith has been phenomenal, but pro-level guards win in March, and I'm curious to see if they can debunk that belief for me. Bigger than that, it's legacy right now for Zach Edey. I truly believe if Zach Edey wins a national title, you have to look at him as easily in the top 10 of most dominant and most impressive college basketball resumes of all time. I mean, he's going to be back-to-back National Player of the Year. They will have won back-to-back Big Ten championships. Obviously, the stain, the scarlet letter, is that loss to a 16 seed. If they can turn this around like Virginia did a handful of years ago and it results in a title, what else does that young man need to prove? Truthfully, he doesn't need to prove anything at this point. But if he can add that, what a ridiculous, rare-aired career he's had.
It's one of the great headlines that everyone can start to track as we get closer and closer to one of the most important times of the year. March Madness getting going for the men's and women's side. Should be box office stuff coming up this spring, and hopefully we'll get to talk to Jordan Cornette again as we get closer and closer to that, and visit in about your Bengals. Big decisions coming up with T. Higgins right now. I know you're a big all things Cincinnati guy, so we'll get you back on to talk plenty of that as we start to get some ironed out answers here. All right, brother?
Yeah, and you guys know I'm going to be harassing you in July, getting you back down to my hometown of Cincinnati to hang with those Bengals. Loyal supporters of the foundation. I love you guys very much.
No, awesome.
Thanks,
we love you, brother. Congrats.
In.
We've loved to see all the success you've had here at NBC and the great job that you're doing. Go get Big Swole right now. Let's go.
Trying to look like you guys, man. Here I go.
There we go.
Nice.
He's out there.
Head to the workout. Well done.
In case you forgot who it was out here getting swole. Jordan Cornette again, kind enough to join us. Thanks, brother. We appreciate it.
See you.
Thanks, man.
Awesome stuff there. The all-time leader, by the way, he talked about Zach Edey's college resume there, Jordan Cornette, and I will say it every time I introduce him anywhere, the all-time leader in block shots at the University of Notre Dame. One block shot, I went and looked this up, in front of our friend and former Notre Dame great Fonzo Ellis as well. 201 to 200 in terms of career blocks for two of not only the best in Notre Dame basketball history, but two of the best Notre Dame broadcasters in the business as well. All right, guys, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, the third. 3 quick stories to send you off into the rest of your day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and try and check us out here live when you can. We're on Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. You can also hear the best of GoJo and Golic wherever you hear VSiN on the radio from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. And if you miss any of us live, we're our great guests, and thanks to Jordan Cornette, great host and college hoops analyst over at NBC. You can check that out wherever you get your podcast or available right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show every day. Guys, let's get to this, that, and the third and start off with this. Everybody, once NIL made its way to college sports, did a lot of the same thing, which was ask a lot of us former players, hey, if you were back in college and this had been around, what kind of NIL deals would you have been looking for? And I think most of us played within our weight class where I was like, hey, man, listen, I went to school at Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. You had the Martin's grocery stores, and that side door deli is where I ate lunch damn near every day. Just throw me a few extra Sammys, maybe a little bit of that stir-fry station for free, and we'll call it a day. Jackson Dart, the quarterback at Ole Miss, who should be a Heisman hopeful next year, and one of the guys that DraftKings probably expect to take a leap next season, he aimed a little bit higher. How much higher? Well, Front Office Sports reported yesterday that Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart signed the first private jet NIL deal. His agreement with Nicholas Air will provide flight hours on a fleet of private jets for travel, training, and philanthropy here. Dad, is this the best NIL deal that we have seen so far? And why would anyone think the answer is anything but yes?
Without question. I mean, absolutely without question. This is when you can travel this way and not have to go through the regular airport and just hop on that plane. Oh my, be dropped off at the plane, be picked up at the plane. This, kudos to him. I bow to Jackson Dart to what he has done. Now, what I don't know, how do you deal with taxes on this, right?
Oh, God.
You're getting paid in hours, which is worth money. How do you deal with that, right? That's a reality, isn't it?
At that point, I mean, it's really sad between TikTok. I shouldn't compare TikTok to NIL deals because it's not the same. But I'm saying the age range. It's like the millionaires and the people with a lot of money are getting younger and younger. And I think the internet, but definitely NIL has to do with that. And I think when it comes to taxes, like, does it matter? He's probably making a decent amount enough money, right?
I would imagine, given what we know about Lane Kiffin and what's going on in the SIP and the way he has embraced modern college football, I would imagine Jackson's not hurting for money. And I'd also imagine this is something that probably comes up. Like, Dad, you've done enough brand deals. You're someone that's probably had hours from private plane companies in the past. And I don't know what your dealings with taxes have been like, but I'd imagine it's not the big worry you have when someone hands you the keys to the PJ and says you get to go and rock with this whenever you want.
No, listen, I'm not turning it down. I'm just asking the question. And how I deal with taxes is I turn to your mother and say, Chris, what are we doing here? And let her handle it because I have no friggin' idea. So she does it. She does all the fun work there. But yeah, I'm not saying you turn this down. This is one of the coolest things there is. I'm sorry I brought up the tax issue. Jackson, good on you. It is a wide range. I don't care where you're going. Say it's travel or philanthropy or whatever, just so you can get on that plane.
No taxes on Sammys.
I can't fathom what it's like. I say, listen, I would have had people hit me up for Sammys too. And like, I remember being the guy when I first got to college with a car and everyone was like, hey, you going to the mall later? Can we hitch a ride? Like, you had people coming out of the woodwork. I can't imagine being the friend with the PJ, the kind of requests that are going to get lobbed at you by the dudes in the locker room.
100%. He's going to be that dude. For sure.
Yeah. You better, Jackson, do the right thing. Orchestrate the trip to Vegas for the homies. Make it happen on the PJ here. You won't. That's team bonding right now. You can probably write that off in your taxes somehow, some way. Claudia, let's get to a subject that we understand on this show a lot more. Taylor Swift and Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, Taylor Swift baked Pop-Tarts for the Chiefs O-line. So basically, he should put a ring on it now. But the best part about this is the man who loves food the most on this team, Andy Reid, missed out on it.
You know, she likes to cook, so she made the offensive lineman these homemade Pop-Tarts.
Oh, wow.
So it was over.
What?
Right,
Taylor Swift homemade Pop-Tarts?
Yeah, so it was over. She knew right where to go.
No, right to go.
Yeah,
Did you get one? Did they give you the rest of the team?
Over.
Right.
Did they give you one? You know, she didn't give me one.
Damn.
And the offensive lineman definitely didn't give me one.
Right.
You could tell he was a little mad about that. He's probably like, why didn't I get one? I want to know what flavor they were. What do you guys think of this one? T Swift. I don't know how many haters she has left because she's doing all the right things.
She meets everyone exactly where they are. And it's no surprise Taylor Swift is one of the more researched and diligent artists when it comes to trying to take care of her fans and giving them the thing they want and being aware. And she knew the beef wants Pop-Tarts. I would imagine, I think it was Strawberry Pop-Tart Day yesterday or National Pop-Tart Day yesterday. So she probably leaned into that. It's no wonder, Dad, when we saw the images of the Chiefs and Taylor Swift celebrating post-Super Bowl, that you saw the O-line had formed a tight perimeter protecting Taylor Swift in the middle of that club scene because she'd fed them. We're very simple creatures, man, and you can buy our affection with treats very easily.
I was in the back of that video, by the way, at Encore after the Super Bowl. I was like face to face watching T Swift and Kelsey make out. It was pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Wow. Was that a better sight, or was Jason Kelsey wearing the luchador mask a better sight for you?
Yeah. The juxtaposition between them, like being all cute and he's just being him, it was unreal. But yeah, there was sort of like, it looked at first like bodyguards, but no, it's just the O-line.
Bottom line is, Mike, I'm with you. You do that. You bake for a crew. I don't care if you bake, if you buy, whatever. You get something for a crew like that. That's friends for life. That's I got your back for life. That's knowing exactly how to do what you need to do. So kudos to her. She's not making any whole lot of wrong moves in this relationship, as it's one of the most public relationships we have seen in a while. She's doing a pretty damn good job.
Do you guys think they make it till the end of next season?
Thriving amidst all this. Feel like this is a good springboard into that right now. Travis in his touring era here. We saw him over in Sydney. I do have to address one more bit of Pop-Tart related business before we move on to the third. And that was the ugly comments made by now former, and I would say disgraced journalist Peter King on the Dan Le Batard show yesterday, who went on that show munching on a Pop-Tart on the way in and decided to proclaim there in his new retirement, where he had left us with this great story, that he was eating a strawberry unfrosted Pop-Tart and that he does not like frosted Pop-Tarts here. I don't know who hurt you along the way, Peter, or why you would say that within earshot of young, impressionable minds, but it's probably a good thing you decided to hang it up, because if not, we were going to have to run you out of town for this kind of BS.
Wow.
Embarrassing.
I mean, listen, everybody gets their choice, right? Some people like pineapple on pizza, and I'm not going to say that's wrong if you like that. If he doesn't like icing on a Pop-Tart, that's one thing, but it is awesome. I mean, I do. I'm not going to go down as hard on him as you are, Mike, in that sense of it's his opinion. He doesn't like frosting on it. I only like frosting on it. I'll eat it without frosting, but I need my frosting, and I don't toast them either. I eat them raw.
Quickly, before we go to the third, put it in the freezer. I know you think I'm crazy. We had this whole debate, me and my friends. It's delicious. Like, it's not frozen, but it's cold. Put it in a freezer. Just do it. Get back to me. I promise you'll like it.
All right, I'll try that.
Trust me, delicious. The cookies and cream especially. I really quickly want to talk about this because it is absolutely absurd. Okay, this happened in the UK. Willy Wonka experience. The ad said a universe where confectionery dreams are brought to life, mind-expanding projections, transports you into the realm of creativity. So people paid $44. And they showed up to literally a warehouse that had plastic props, a small bouncy castle, and then backdrops up against walls that were like the size of, I don't even know what, but they didn't cover the wall. It looked like that's where you go to die. And people paid $44 thinking, our producer Jorgen said it was like the Fire Fest for kids, and there's no other better way to put it.
It's absolutely incredible.
The headline said it all.
Yeah.
The headline said it all. It looks like a meth lab. They were right.
Looked
like a meth lab.
If you're listening, our podcasters, please go look this up on Twitter. There is a woman, literally looks like she's in a meth lab. And it was 4 kids.
I'll just say this. I'm not here to price shame anybody, but if you thought you were going to get an actual chocolate factory rendering for just $44, I got a bridge somewhere I'd like to sell you, because that ticket would have to fetch a lot more, as does the ticket to get into this podcast. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.